Okay, with all, thank you for being here. We have Holly May helping us today. Josie McDaniel Burkett is somewhere.
Right here.
There she is. Well, there she is right there. So here we are again. We've had a lot of activity, and we'll start off today with Chaplain John Denny.
Thank you. Good afternoon. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says, encourage one another and build each other up. Please pray with me. Great Creator, during times of stress and uncertainty, we can get frustrated and anxious. When this happens, help us to take a pause and seek patience instead of pessimism, choose kindness in place of contempt, and look for ways to encourage one another and build each other up. Help us to be good stewards of one another. Be with us, O Lord. Amen.
Thank you. Well, again, this is a storm that we have not seen before. There's parts of it have not been as bad as we thought, although they've been bad, but there are some parts coming that likely will be worse than what we have seen before and in some different areas. I'm glad to report that thus far, we have not had any reports of any fatalities. We hope that it stays like that, and we want to urge people again to be safe. Think about what you're doing. Don't take any chances. And remember, this water can be very dangerous, particularly when it's moving. The threat of severe flooding across the state remains very high, and we'll get into that with some details in a few seconds. Heavy rainfall has already hit several parts of our state, especially the low country. And what we have happening is this storm is coming up. It's moving very slowly. It's got a lot of rain in it, and it is going out over the ocean and gathering some strength and coming back in. The winds have not been hurricane strength yet. They somewhere maybe between 35 and 55 miles an hour, something at their height, I think, if I'm right on that. But the water is going to be very heavy, particularly in the northern part of the state, from Myrtle Beach all the way up the line along North Carolina, all the way up to where you remember we had in 2018, that was Hurricane Florence, and where we had overflow in Conway, and we had to put the aqua dams on Highway 501 and all that, and we've never seen that kind of water there. Well, we're likely to see it again there as well as in the other areas around that part of the state. And also, you remember Joaquin in 2015, it wasn't a hurricane, but it was a flood. That came right here through the Midlands. We're likely to see that again. And you remember we had a number of dams breaking. We had water that was over the roads around Forest Acres. Cars were on the bridges there going across Gills Creek and being covered with water. And it comes up fast and it moves fast. So we're likely to have both of those areas having that kind of activity this time. Maybe not, maybe we will. But we were preparing for that kind of heavy rainfall and the danger that comes with that kind of flooding. We're confident there's going to be flooding. We're confident there's going to be a lot of rain. The only question is how much is that going to be? As I mentioned, we have no fatalities, but there have been instances of people driving around barricades. I ask everybody to remember somebody made a decision, competent people, to put that barricade there for a reason. Don't drive around the barricade. Don't drive through water. Don't walk through water like that. Be very careful. Also, yesterday we received a federal emergency declaration, which we had asked for, which provides assets for protection. That includes these swift boats, it includes some people, maybe helicopters, maybe vehicles, those kind of things. And we'll hear from a representative on that in a moment as well. Now later we will, of course, we'll be seeking money for reimbursement for money that we spent, as well as some money to help rebuild things if necessary that have been destroyed. Final point is, remember, please get your information only from official channels. Those are the only ones that you can have confidence in. Sometimes some of the worst tragedies are the result of someone meaning well but providing inaccurate information or misunderstood information that results in a tragedy, and you cannot undo a tragedy. So we're going to see a lot of rain, not that much wind, but a lot of rain, and this storm is creeping across our state, creeping across. And so that's one of the reasons we have so much of this water. So we urge everybody to be careful. And now I'd like to call on John Quagliarello of the National Weather Service to provide details on what I just said and more. John?
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon. So as the Governor had mentioned, a dangerous situation is unfolding across portions of the state, with life-threatening flash flooding ongoing, which has closed roadways and resulted in some water rescues. We've already experienced significant rainfall, with widespread 9 to 13 inches across southern South Carolina. Gusty winds have downed a significant number of trees across the coastal plain and eastern Midlands, causing some power outages. Some of the highest wind reports through midday so far include a 63-mile-an-hour gust at Folly Beach, 59-mile-per-hour gust at Battery Point in Charleston County, 56-mile-an-hour wind gust at Isle of Palms, 55-mile-an-hour wind gust at Beaufort, and 52-mile-an-hour wind gust at Charleston Airport. Tornadoes have also likely occurred in Edisto Beach, Kiowa Island, Monk's Corner, Ladies Island, West Ashley, and Isle of Palms. As of 2 p.m., Tropical Storm Debby had winds of 40 miles an hour and was located 10 miles southeast Savannah, so just moving offshore, and was moving east-northeast at 5 miles an hour. So its forward speed is already starting to come down. As the Governor mentioned, it's really starting to slow down. And it'll slowly lift northward just off the South Carolina coast through Wednesday, before it eventually shifts back onshore along the central or northern portion of the South Carolina coast Wednesday night through Thursday morning. With Debbie's slow movement, long-duration impacts are expected to persist through late week. Overall, the rainfall will remain the greatest concern, with 10 to 20 inches of storm total rainfall, with locally up to 25 inches of rain possible. This will likely result in catastrophic flash and urban flooding across eastern South Carolina. In addition to the flash flooding, rivers will rise significantly, with some of the greatest concern in the PD Basin. However, moderate to major flooding is still likely across the entire coastal plain. This river flooding could last long-term, cutting off access to some communities. I can't stress enough the need to avoid flooded roadways. Your life is not worth taking the risk. Winds will be a continued factor as well through late week, with gusts upwards of 45 to 60 miles an hour possible along portions of the northern and central South Carolina coast. However, even lesser wind speeds inland will be capable of knocking down trees and power lines due to the saturated ground. It just doesn't take nearly as much wind to knock those trees down when the ground is so wet. We're also watching the storm surge threat, with 2 to 4 feet of surge expected along some parts of the coast. This could flood low-lying and typical flood-prone areas. And as for the tornado threat, that will persist through midweek, with a few tornadoes possible along the coastal plain. So given all these threats, we urge residents and visitors to follow the advice of local officials, and to get more information, please go to weather.gov. Thank you, Governor.
Thanks, John. Director Kim Stinson, Emergency Management Division.
All right, thank you, sir. The State Emergency Operations Center moved this morning to Operating Condition 1, which is our highest readiness state. And our State Emergency Operations Center priorities include supporting local shelter and localized evacuation operations, as well as maintaining the transportation lifeline to the potentially impacted areas. South Carolina Emergency Management Division has a number of regional personnel, and we've deployed those to 9 counties to assist local authorities in their response and recovery efforts. We continue to closely coordinate with county emergency management officials. Right now, 22 counties are at some level of operation, with 7 counties at Operating Condition 1. Again, that's the highest readiness state. And then 15 counties at Operating Condition 2, which is a heightened awareness level, and that's probably going to shift here over the next 24 to 48 hours. Their primary focus includes sheltering operations, response including rescue operations, and possible local evacuations. No major communications issues have been reported so far. Also, very few residential and business damages have been reported, and they're very preliminary. but we were early in the operation. Colleton County did report that they had probably about 50 houses that had been damaged to some extent, but again, that's very preliminary. Many counties are reporting blocked roads and localized flooding, and coastal counties in the first tier back are primarily where that's happening right now. In the logistics area, our Winnsboro warehouse is operational with food, water, sandbags, and tarps. Our general logistics, transportation, and commodities contracts have been activated if additional supplies are needed. So far, we've fielded 155 requests from the local authorities, and 125 of those are either completed or in progress. And those requests range from sandbags to swift water rescue assets. And under the Emergency Management Assistance Compact, we have requested support from other states, including 5 swiftwater rescue teams and an incident management team. We also have a team here from South Carolina, from Tennessee, to coordinate those requests as we move forward. The public information phone system opened this morning for residents to call in with any questions, and that number is 1-866-246-0133. Now that's on our website. It's also in the Hurricane Guide and a number of other sources as well. In closing, I'd like to mention again a few points we talked about yesterday. First, if you live in a flood-prone area, a low-lying area, identify higher ground where you can seek safety if needed. And certainly don't wait until it's too late. If you're advised to evacuate by your local officials, please do so immediately. And then certainly monitor the weather updates and follow the instructions again of those local officials. And our website at seemd.org and our South Carolina Emergency Management app are also excellent sources of information. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Stinson. I mentioned yesterday our federal partners, Rear Admiral Doug Schofield of the Coast Guard called yesterday, and also federal FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell called to offer reminders of their availability. And we have from FEMA today the Federal Coordinating Officer of FEMA, Brett Howard.
Thank you,
Howard.
Good morning. Brett Howard. Been appointed as Federal Coordinating Officer, as the Governor just stated. Governor, it's an honor to work here in your state. Everything that South Carolina has done to this point has been remarkable. The briefings that you're about to hear will let you know and let the citizens know that the Governor, his cabinet, Director Stinson, and his staff know what to do, and they've got the plan in place to execute. And it's very comforting to work in a state that is this progressive and this forward-leaning to help the citizens and be ready to respond to anything that happens. And our concerns at FEMA go out, our thoughts and prayers go out to the families and the communities who are fixing to have either already undergone or about to undergo possibly catastrophic and historic flooding in their areas, like the Governor said, like they've never seen before. Yesterday, the Governor talked about President Biden made a declaration for South Carolina. He turned on the ability for federal resources to come in and support the state. My job right now is to make sure that I am not late to the need. Whatever the Governor, whatever Director Stinson, whatever the state needs, I want to make sure we have it in place, ready to respond to whatever it is they need it to. And you've heard that we've already had we've turned over 5 urban search and rescue units, federal search and rescue units, teams that have that swiftwater capability to the state. It was their request, and we have sent them to the state to deploy as they see needed. And we're right now working with the Governor, the Director Stinson, their team to determine what else, what are we missing, what do we need to be thinking about going forward, what other federal resources can we bring in and have ready to deploy should the need arise. I want to reiterate what the Governor and Director Stinson said. Pay attention, everybody, pay attention to what the local officials are telling you to do in those correct channels, not just hearsay, word on the street. Listen to them, heed evacuation orders if they're asking you to move, and just stay alert to the weather and make and follow those instructions by the by your local government. Right now, we're coordinating with the state on anything they need, as I stated. We have our staff here, the IMAT team, Incident Management Assistance team arrived today. Other federal staff and agencies are en route, and we are poised to assist the state in whatever you need, Governor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. General McCarty, Dan McCarty, National Guard.
Thank you, Governor. The soldiers, airmen, and employees of the Military Department of South Carolina, along with our State Guard, are continuing to work to be in a position to support the state in response to Tropical Storm Debby. We have currently over 100 soldiers on state active duty, and that number will continue to grow through today and tomorrow. We will have currently approximately 50 high water vehicles and recovery vehicles that are on duty. Priority given to the southern part of the state. We will continue to put and move vehicles to the central part of the state, as in the Charleston area, Berkeley, Georgetown area, and then on up into the PD region over the next day. We're continuing now to assess where the storm may carry us over the next few days, looking to determine what additional assets may be needed, whether it's military police, our engineers for debris clearing, or other things to support scenarios as described by the governor that we saw back in previous storms. Our aviation assets are prepared to support LLR in the search and rescue. Our HART teams are ready. However, the weather conditions right now would preclude that from being a mission that we could undertake. We have 6 liaison officers currently deployed to affected counties, and we have additional liaison officers moving now. The Florida EMAC request for the 1053rd Trans Company, they've completed that mission. We will begin to demob and have them convoy back to South Carolina. Due to the weather conditions, that convoy will take probably 12 plus hours, with safety being the priority of getting them back here. Once they're back in South Carolina, we will look to remission those 30 additional vehicles for future missions that could come up. The dual status request form, the governor has signed that letter. It will be sent through channels. What that does is allow the state of South Carolina, the military, the National Guard, to better utilize federal assets, Title X forces, if the need were to arise. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Powell, Justin Powell, Department of Transportation.
Thank you, Governor. The state's transportation network is starting to feel the effects of Tropical Storm Debby's heavy rains. As of 1:30, we have 48 state roads that have been closed as a result of floodwaters. That number will be fluid as we go through this event, as roads are opened and closed as we go along. We've been keeping an eye on very closely on I-95 down in Jasper County. It is currently open to traffic. However, we have had to close ramps on exits 22 and 33 there due to flooding on the ramps. SCDOT has 2,300 personnel mobilized yesterday and has the same complement mobilized today, working round the clock to respond and recover from this event. With the rains anticipated to continue to fall through Thursday, we do anticipate more roads will flood during the course of this event. We strongly advise residents to stay off the roads if at all possible. If you do go out, we encourage you to take your time, drive slowly, and resist the temptation to go into floodwaters. It is simply not worth the risk. Thank you, Governor.
And I would add to that, as Director Powell, Secretary Powell mentioned, the rain is going to continue to fall, we know, through Thursday. But when it gets into the rivers in North Carolina and up in the headwaters of the rivers in our state, it all comes our way, so it takes time. So a lot of this flooding will happen likely after that date, so we have to be alert for a long time. Yes, sir. Director Woods, Rob Woods. Yes, sir. Department of Public Safety.
Good afternoon, Rob Woods, South Carolina Department of Public Safety. SCDPS operational priorities remain the same. We're responding to traffic collisions, disabled and stranded motorists, as well as assisting with road closures. Our number of personnel currently assigned to this operational period, which began at 7 o'clock this morning, will end at 7 o'clock this evening, is 235 law enforcement personnel assigned to patrol. That's from the Midlands to the coast. That includes personnel from SCDPS, our Highway Patrol and State Transport Police divisions, as well as personnel from the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, and the South Carolina Department of Pardon, Parole, and Probation. Tonight, we will have a total of 186 personnel that'll be working the night shift, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., and that will also include DPS personnel, SLED, DNR, and Triple P. That's a total of 421 law enforcement personnel currently assigned to the mission. Just to give you some numbers in terms of what our calls for service have done over the past day. These are numbers from yesterday, from 7 a.m. to 7 p. and 7 p. to 7 a. this morning. And these calls, just so you know, again, are focused on what I've already mentioned: disabled motorists and stranded motorists, collisions, and then closed roadways. This is compared to last year at the same time. So from 2023 to 2024, last year during the same period of time, we had 231 calls for service during the day shift. This year we've had 340. During the night shift, the second shift, we had 344 last year, 113 last year, and 211 this year. So the total numbers in terms of calls for service over that 24-hour period was 344 for 2023 and 551 for 2024. So obviously our calls for service have gone up significantly. As I previously mentioned, highway safety is a partnership between law enforcement and the motoring public. So as we work to keep the motoring public safe, we ask that you all also work to keep yourself safe. And in a situation like this, the best advice I can give you is stay off the roads. And if you've got to travel, please adjust your driving behaviors according to the weather, and that is especially reducing your speed. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Director Wood. Director Mike Leach, Department of Social Services.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon. Our agency, mass care teams, volunteer organizations such as Red Cross and Salvation Army, and many others are working side by side with our counties to support shelters for those who are displaced by the storm. Currently, South Carolina has 11 open shelters, 2 shelters in Beaufort County, 2 in Berkeley County, 2 in Charleston County, 2 in Dorchester, 1 in Jasper County, and 1 in Orangeburg, and 1 in Williamsburg. We're in the process of opening more locations at county requests in Charleston, Florence, and Georgetown later today, and likely there will be additional shelters opening over the next 24 to 48 hours. And so, please check with your local emergency managers. The local county officials will be sharing that information when a new one opens up, or you can go to www.scemd.org or download the SC Emergency Manager app to find one near you. Marion and Dillon counties each requested shelter support with plans to open in the next 24 hours. And our agency is ready to support all locations and have the capability of supporting more as requested. What to bring? With all evacuations, it is important to bring a few things. Bring helpful documents, identification, homeowner or rental paperwork, insurance information, if you have any. And we recommend evacuees bring blankets, sleeping bags, pillows, and comfort items, medications, and any special foods if you're on a restricted diet. We have partners supplying food and water at all operating shelters. And if you forget any medication or vital durable medical equipment, we will do our best to assist in its replacement when it is safe to do so. So again, for shelter information, please go to scemd.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Leach. Director Myra Reese, Department of Environmental Services.
Okay, thank you, Governor. Good afternoon. Our priorities at Department of Environmental Services remain the same, but I want to say that a key priority for us is to maintain open lines of communications with our local officials around the state to provide information and assistance. We have been having daily conversations with many county officials to help answer questions and offer guidance and recommendations as we all prepare and continue to experience this extreme weather event. Many of those conversations are centered around dams. And as you may be aware, I'm sure, severe weather events stress and really test our state's infrastructure, and dams are no exception. So here's an update as far as the dams in South Carolina, any impacts we've noted already. We've had only one report of one dam breach. That one was located in Colleton County, It was one of the smaller dams that's not even regulated, so there were no impacts to homes or roads. The result of that breach, the water actually flowed to Black Creek. Now, what that means is it could contribute, to some of the localized flooding, but no homes or roads were impacted. I do want to also say that yesterday I mentioned that we had identified about 19 dams that we wanted to take a last-minute check. And I want to offer some clarity on that. We have one of the most experienced, best dam safety programs in the nation. And I think a lot of that is due to the experience that we've had over the years and being so well prepared. We're very engaged nationally. And there are things that we learn every storm and we learn from other states. And that information and expertise helped us identify those dams that we just wanted to take a last-minute check to see if any additional actions might be warranted. The results of those assessments were back on my desk by the end of the day, and I'm happy to say that there were no urgent issues identified in those assessments. I do also acknowledge that there are many citizens that have concerns about dams, and so we do have a number that I want to share, a new number, Governor, because we had quite a few calls yesterday. This number is called our Public Information Phone System, and that number is 1-888-246-0133. That's 1-888-246-0133. So if you're a business or a citizen and you're just want to get some information about the status of dams in your community, you can call that number. I also want to mention drinking water and wastewater systems across the state. We've had no reports of issues reported at this time related to delivery of safe water to our communities, and systems are well prepared with emergency action plans if necessary. From a wastewater perspective, there have been no reports of system-wide impacts, but as expected, we would expect sanitary sewer overflows. Stormwater systems and wastewater systems, just the delivery systems, are being infiltrated with a lot of additional water. And as a result, you could see some of these overflows. And that also leads to another point I want to make. You keep hearing from all the agencies the importance of staying out of floodwaters. From an environmental and public health perspective, we need to recognize that in the future, when the floodwaters clear the roads, there's still going to be pockets of saturation around homes. And it's very tempting for people, especially kids and children, to play in those waters. Just emphasize that some of that flood water can have bacteria in there and also chemicals from urban runoff and stuff. So just wanted to emphasize that. And then in closing, I will just mention coastal impacts. We have no reports of any structures being impacted at this time, no concerns about erosion. We are aware of a tornado in Edisto that may have had an impact on some structures, and we'll be focused on that after the storm clears. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Reese. Director Emily Farr, LLR, Labor Licensing and Regulation.
Thank you, Governor. I can report that the state search and rescue efforts have been well planned and are positioned in a place to be able to respond however they may be needed as the flooding continues to grow across the state. We have all current resource requests that will be filled by the end of the day today using all of our in-state resources that are already deployed throughout the state. We expect the out-of-state resources, these are teams from Tennessee, Alabama, and Michigan, will be deployed by the end of the day. You've heard mention already that we're working very closely with FEMA to roster and deploy all 5 of their search and rescue teams that are already staged here in Columbia. We really appreciate all of the partnership and help across the state of our firefighters across the state that make up our in-state resources for search and rescue, and of course all of these teams outside of the state and with FEMA to help really build a strong search and rescue plan for our citizens. We continue to do future planning in coordination with the Emergency Management Division to be ready to respond to meet additional resource requests that we expect will be made as this storm continues.
Thank you. Back to fall. Director Andrew Bateman, Office of Regulatory Staff.
Thank you, Governor. My name is Andrew Bateman with the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff. Throughout this storm, we've been in frequent communication with utility representatives. As of right now, we stand at approximately 12,129 storm-related outages statewide. Currently, counties in the Low Country, such as Colleton, Beaufort, and Charleston, have been the most impacted with significant amounts of rain and power outages. As the storm progresses and moves north, we expected the PD to be significantly impacted and are expecting widespread power outages. After speaking with utility representatives, I know that they have crews working around the clock diligently to restore power. However, to restore power as it is safe to do so. However, please be mindful that as standing floodwaters occur, that may hamper and delay some of the restoration efforts. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Everybody. Thank you very much. Does anybody have a question? Yes, sir.
I got some information from, this is for Director Reese, some information earlier about McCready Dam, I believe, which was causing some evacuations. Were folks successfully evacuated when there were concerns about that dam, and how many were impacted?
We had a call with Colleton County this morning to talk about McGrady Dam, plus the one I mentioned, the unregulated dam. We got together our experts with their experts at the local level, and what we determined, there were some reports that maybe it was failing. Actually, what was happening with that dam is the emergency spillway was working as designed, and so it was taking that pressure off of the dam. However, there's so much flooding and so many other things. The county is doing a great job observing that dam. I can't recall the exact number that were impacted as far as homes, but we're really stressing to folks to make sure they follow the advice of the local officials.
So folks were successfully evacuated when that initial report came out?
I'm not sure. We would have to get that from the local officials. Okay, thank you.
Director Reese, actually, to follow up with that, so you mentioned that of the 19 dams that you approximately assessed, you had no concerns, regarding those. Could you give me an idea of where these dams were? Like, where were these dams that you were considering that now are of no concern to you?
One of the, we use a lot of parameters and criteria, but certainly the projected rainfall is one of those first things we look at. And if you look at some of the maps that John Q has shared and some others, where it was, I forget the different categories, but I know there was moderate projected rainfall, significant. We really started with those areas, and we came up, I think, with 8 that were worst case scenario projected rainfall, and then that next layer we added about 11 more. And just an example, I'll give you an example, is that some dams do not have spillways. And so it's just important to make sure those levels were lowered. And in many of those cases, when we went out there, we were able to note that. And then, like I said, we do a lot with lessons learned and just knowing the design of dams very well and the conditions and what we've experienced in the past. There may not be a current condition that gives us a signal it's a problem, but just our experience is saying this is one we probably need to check. Okay.
And to be clear, there were no issues with anything that you found
That's
or
correct.
anything that you're particularly concerned about?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the dam owners did what they needed to do.
Director Reese, if the state receives all of that potential rainfall that is predicted over the next few days, do we have any idea how long it will take after the storm stops for the water levels to recede to normal? Are we talking about perhaps a week, 2 weeks? What are the anticipations there?
I can't come up with an exact projection. I think it's going to be site-specific, dam-specific. And if there's any risk, we will do a post-storm assessment. And if we come across a dam that looks like it's at full capacity and the spillway and just the current design is not getting some of that relief off, we may be working with the dam owner to put some siphons in there to relieve some of it. So just as important as our pre-storm assessments or our post-storm assessments.
Thank you. I'll add this about dams and water. When we were about to have a pit overflow in Conway, and we had to put those barriers out along the side of 501 so people could get in and out of Myrtle Beach and Horry County, it was dry. The rains were gone. And this is the water that was building up in the rivers and coming down. So we know that's going to happen. And also, one point, Myra, how many dams do we have? About 40,000 or something like that in the?
We have 2,400 regulated and a total of about 40,000.
Total of about 40,000. That means there's a lot of water in South Carolina, even when it's not raining. That's good because some states don't have any water and they have very few dams to worry about. So we always need to look on the bright side of that. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Excuse me. It was mentioned earlier that there's 11 open shelters. Do you know how many people are currently in those shelters?
Yeah, there's currently 85 citizens who are in the shelters. 81 of those are in Charleston County, 2 are in Dorchester, and 2 are in Jasper at this point in time.
Shelters. I didn't hear one in Colleton County yet. We've heard about lots of flooding there. Is there any plans to put one in Colleton County? Where should those folks go? Should they have already been evacuated?
Yeah, I think that the local county officials are determining the need for a shelter there, and we'll be working with them to determine if that's needed.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Governor, you mentioned that there are no fatalities, which is excellent news. Have there been any reports of injuries so far?
I'll ask. Reports? So far, no.
So far, no. And I believe, as Director Stenson mentioned, the swiftwater rescues. Do we know where those have been conducted?
I don't.
We haven't.
Go
Sorry.
We haven't had to conduct any rescues yet, at least as of a couple hours ago. But all of the teams are in place when or if that is necessary.
Thank you.
Yes.
More questions? Yes, sir.
Governor, at this point, has the situation changed from last night concerning having no evacuation orders that you plan to issue or any state agency?
Nothing has changed.
And are there any local evacuation orders that y'all want folks to heed? We're here in Jasper County, maybe.
Don't know of any. Any more questions? Thank you very much.
I got 48 rates closed.